Okay, welcome everybody to the UARC meeting tonight. And we are doing a live stream, so everybody enjoy. You can see what's up how it is on the screen up there. And we do have people actually watching it. So first off, do we have any new hams? There's one. All right. Let's get your name and call sign and what license you got?
Hi, my name is Tom Ross. I'm KQ4ECF from Jacksonville, Florida. Just moved out here.
All right. Welcome. Hope you enjoy it. Any upgrades? Nobody upgrading, huh? All right. I have a small bit of bad news. We haven't passed out tickets because the prizes got left home. Oops. Didn't mean to embarrass anybody. All right. Is Morris on? Can he talk? Nope.
Well, vent for a second.
Okay.
John should be here with the cable. We should be able to hear him with the door.
Good. Okay. Do we have any news that pertains to the club or the community? Kind of like the recent spat of meteors that have hit the Earth. They showed one that hit this last weekend, and it's just down the street from where my daughter lives.
We didn't have a meteor hit the Earth, but we had an event happen that hit the Utah VHF Society. We lost our site at Frisco, and we think we've got a power supply problem there. And also the Snowbird link is down. So the links are really down. The repeaters are still working. So we have no communications to the south, and we have no communications to Cache County, Bear Lake, or Evanston. And we're working to get it fixed.
All right, that sounds typical ham. Yeah. We've also had some issues with Scott's, right?
As I understand it, Scott's was a descents problem on Farnsworth, and I think Clint got that fixed, didn't you?
Yeah, I don't know why the microphone went over there.
Okay. Well, I was going to talk a little bit about Leamington. Looks like the wind got us at Leamington. Going to send a survey party down there on Saturday and see what happened, but we may have lost the rotor or elements or something. So it's still there and working, just not the beam. So the G5RV or the NFED half wave are both still up and running.
All right. Another case of we will get it fixed, but it is still running. Anybody else have anything? And yeah, on the meteorite, it went across the Salt Lake Valley about 2 months ago and landed out in the West Desert. And the guy that found it says, and I'm not going to tell you where. Okay, let's open the floor. Do we have any nominations for president? Anybody want to be president? Wait. Yeah, come on, bring them down here. Mike, bring them down. Do we have any nominations for president? Vice president? You raised your hand, I saw that. Oh. Not me. All right. We have a severe need for some of these positions here. And some of the positions will, we already have people in those positions that are willing to continue, but not all of them. So if you know somebody that wants to help the club and serve, now's the time to talk. The elections are next month, and we need to know who's going to step up and play it. Well, I will. I'm just looking generally, anybody want any position? And these guys work in the background, but they need to know something about graphic arts and setting up stuff and getting it published. Program chairs, that's setting up these meetings, working with the field day and other events, working with the club to get people out. Secretary Treasurer, they're keeping the background straightened out, keeping the funds where they're supposed to be, making sure that everything's straight up. Executive Vice President has some specific duties also, as opposed to the Vice President. So we do need names to put in there. Anybody, it's not a big onerous position, and you're not looking at heavy liabilities or anything, but hey, you got to play with the toys. So, I don't have any volunteers.
Hearing no one, I move that we hear the report of the nominating committee.
All right. Come on up here, Mike. I assume that was seconded, right?
Okay, Linda Reeder and I were the nominating committee for this year, and we came up with a list of nominees for the different offices. And for president, we're nominating Marvin Match, KA7TPH. MATCH. MAAA. What? Marvin what? Is Marvin here? Yeah. Oh, there he is, right over there. Yeah, I should take off my glasses. Yeah, I can see you now.
You got your glasses so you can see, huh?
Yeah, I got to use them for reading, though, unfortunately. Hey, good to see you, Marvin. Okay, for executive vice president, since Lonnie Oakes is not going to be running this year, we've nominated Linda Reeder in 7HVF. Salute. Okay, for vice president is this guy, none of you will know him, but Bruce Faraday, KF7OZK. All right, for secretary, James Bennett, KK7AVS. Programming is Jerry Brummett, WJ3RI. And BRUMMETT. I think that's correct. And for the other programming chairperson, I'm running for re-election. MC, capital A, I, N, S, H. Okay, and I must announce that Jerry and I are running as a team. So if you are wanting to find anybody who wants to run against one of us, find two people to run, because we come as a team on this particular job. And then we've got the microvolt editors. Noji Ratzliff, KN0JI is one. RATZLAFF, I think. Yeah, that's good. That's close enough. And KN0JI. Jed Marty, KI7NNP. Is he here today? Oh, there he is. Okay. Jed, I've never met you in person, so good to meet you. MARTI and KI7NNP. No, in, two N's. Nest, or November. Okay, that's good. And also Brian Johansson, KZ7Q. Is Brian here tonight?
I'm here, but I don't know that much about graphics.
Are you withdrawing?
I think I'm
You're withdrawing? Okay, well then.
technically, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. There's no harm in that. Okay, so we have two then microvolt editor, and are there? Clint, do you know if the microvolt editors, if their editorials are up on the website yet?
No, I haven't put them there. Morris is gathering them together.
Oh, okay, all right. So that's our nominations for this year. All right. Oh, treasurer. I thought Chuck was running again for treasurer. Oh, no, because I was just taking it for granted that you would. So, yeah.
And Bruce, Jerry's spelled J-E-R-I.
Oh, I missed that one. Yeah, J-E-R-I. Okay, and his call sign is WJ3RI. J3RI, and mine's KI7MTI.
By the way, we should have audio from, have Morris say something. Hey, Mike.
Close them.
Have
Yep.
Morris say something.
Morris, say something. Where is he?
Morris, go ahead and take the floor.
Actually, everybody has pretty much said everything that I was going to say. We will be teaching classes again in January. I don't have the dates in front of me, but I believe it's around the 12th. Whatever that Monday after the club meeting in January is, will be the first technician class. Tuesdays will be the extra class, and Wednesdays will be the general class. The only other things I was going to mention was Leamington, which has already been talked about, and the elections. I should mention that there is an assistant editor position, but it's not an elected position. So if you are interested in assisting the microvolt editor, please let us know. Anybody on the board can take that, or you can send it to me. Our email addresses are on the web. So I believe that's all I wanted to discuss. Unless somebody can remind me of something else. Be sure we will have a method of allowing you to vote online, and Clint may want to talk about that briefly, but that will be available. So back to you.
All right, thanks.
Back to Mel's question earlier. Ted brought up the bylaws and reviewed them, and he answered 1 year.
Okay, so the answer to the question about on the bylaws is to be on the board, or is it all the board? The position of president. You have to be a member of UARC for at least 1 year. Correct. All right, I was going to say ask somebody else, but he's no longer here.
All right. A couple Sundays ago, I made an announcement that I would be doing the Elmer's Corner. Elizabeth, who was going to be doing it tonight, decided to go to Iceland and chase auroras. And she tells me she caught one the first night she was there. So I guess she's doing pretty good. But I decided to do Elmer's Corner on a year of discovery. And this is one of the things that as a club, Salt Lake Crossroads has been pursuing a number of events throughout the year, trying to find new amateur radio operators. And so I announced this on the net on the 30th, the 30th of October. And then I was also the moderator for the roundtable right afterwards. And the roundtable started out a little slow, but then Tom from Ogden, AF7J, got on and he asked the question, what do we do to find and keep hams? And that just lit things up. And the round table just kept going and going and going. There were a total of 12 hams that weighed in during the time that it was on. And the round table didn't get over until 11:15. So it was a topic that people wanted to discuss. Now Morris, our president, AD7SR, asked me several months ago about doing a presentation on trying to get hams involved into amateur radio, ones that are not involved, and also recruiting new people. And I'm not saying that we have all the answers, but we're discovering them. I think he was concerned that a lot of hams get into amateur radio, they get discouraged, and then they drop out. Next slide. Almost a year ago, a young ham, not even licensed 2 months, volunteered at an event at the Gateway Mall during the Illuminate Festival. They had a STEAM lab at the Gateway, and Salt Lake Crossroads had a booth there. Next slide. 4 of us met up at Make Salt Lake parking lot. There's just a couple blocks to the west of the Gateway, easy to find parking there. And we walked down, but before we went down, this ham said, I brought a poster that I made on CW, but I don't think it's very good. Would you look at it and give your opinion on whether or not I should bring it? Well, I was kind of intrigued by that. And no, I didn't tell you to advance, but go ahead, leave it there. That's good. So I went and looked at the poster, and it's a little amateurish, but looks like we're all amateurs in this room. So I told him to bring it. And he also brought these 2 keys with him, and the one on the far left there is an antique, and I had my eye on that. I wanted to walk home with it, but the guy caught me on the way out. So anyway, long story short, his exhibit stole the show. Nobody wanted to look at our radios or our antennas. They were all over here playing with the CW key, trying to spell their names in Morse code, getting their friends and their family to come over and play around with it. And so this was a great thing because it introduced a lot of people to the fact that CW is still a thing. Fast forward to February. Okay, next slide. Thank you. When I was preparing a booth for the Be Ready Utah Expo at the Mountain America Expo Center, this ham had the audacity to send me posters. Next slide. I looked at what he sent me, added some bells and whistles, and sent them out. Next slide. His materials inspired me to make a couple of posters myself. Next slide. It also inspired me to make this young ham the co-organizer of Crossroads events. He has great insight into what works, was a big help in organizing that and subsequent events that Crossroads has run. Next slide. This is also a map that this ham sent me, printed out as a 2 by 3 foot poster. We exhibited it at the show. The poster was seen by the director of Salt Lake City Emergency Management. And up until this time, the Salt Lake City Emergency Management had just changed over from into a new team, and the new team was kind of frosty to us. A little bit of background. Salt Lake City Emergency Management is our primary benefactor at Crossroads. They pay for most of our equipment. So having a good relationship with these folks was important. But 1 second, I've got to, it's these cold weather. You want to get a picture? All right, let's try. So the director of Salt Lake City Emergency Management saw this poster and she was intrigued. And when we explained what it represented, her attitude changed right then and there. All of a sudden, she was very warm to us. And afterwards, things worked out a lot better. This ham is with us tonight. James, would you like to stand up? KK7AVS is this ham. He's been just a... Next slide. What if I'd thrown a wet rag over James' enthusiasm for ham radio the night in the parking lot? Do you think that he would be helping me out anymore? Or would he have been discouraged and have gone away? We met dozens of hams at the events. A lot of the hams that we met at the events were licensed, had radios, but didn't know how to use them. They'd been licensed for several years and never got on the air. James was able to program a lot of the radios. Most of them were Baofangs. Nobody knows how to program a Baofeng, but James has some kind of a third sense for that stuff. And then we told him about the Crossroads social net that we hold Monday through Friday. And we encouraged them to get in touch with their local clubs, including directing them to their local clubs by email. Okay, next slide. Where am I at? This past April, the organizers of Be Prepared Expo asked us to make a presentation on amateur radio at their event. Next slide. I wasn't crazy about the idea of standing in front of dozens of strangers to discuss amateur radio, but it was a great idea because we could get the message out in a meaningful way. So James and I did the presentation. Next slide. We got quite a few questions from our audience before the moderator told us it was time to shut up and pack out. And when it was over, they gave us a standing ovation and they mobbed our booth afterwards. So we did get a lot of people that were pretty ignorant about what amateur radio was all about, and we educated them. And, you know, the interesting thing is that there was another group, amateur radio group, that had a large presentation area. And on the Friday of the event, they barely showed up. And on the Saturday of the event, they didn't show up. You know, that does not look good for amateur radio. If you're going to be doing an event, show up and put something out there. So we did show up, we did a presentation, and already the Be Prepared Utah is asking us, or Be Prepared Expo is asking us to do the event again next year. Next slide. The organizers of the August DIY Festival asked us to do their event in their STEM lab this time. Next slide. And they highlighted us in Slug Magazine. Slug Magazine, as some of you might know, is a kind of a countercultural magazine for a younger audience, much younger than most of the people in this room. So because they were highlighting Salt Lake Crossroads, a lot of people were able to get an idea of what amateur radio is about. James, once again, thinking outside the box, brought along an interesting toy. Next slide. This is his crystal radio set. Now, most of you in this room have built a crystal radio set at some time in your life. You're old enough that you did it. But younger people don't do this stuff anymore. And people were enthralled with the idea that you could hear a radio station based on the power of that station powering your radio. Now, it wasn't very loud. James did a really interesting thing. Rather than having an earpiece, he put a speaker to this tube out in front. But this was, you know, something that, well, you know, basically I wish I had thought about it. I wish I had thought of it. So, and again, a lot of people, next slide. A lot of people came over and looked at it. What is this thing? And we told them, and they went away with a greater appreciation for radio and a greater appreciation for amateur radio. Even though they might not become amateurs themselves, they will be able to tell people, no, it's not CB. It's actually a licensed radio service. Next slide. This September's Avenue Street Fair was the last event that we've done this year. Due to the work that Crossroads leadership did to build bridges with the new Salt Lake City Emergency Management Team, we were invited to be a part of the Emergency Management Team's tables at this event. In fact, they gave us a whole 10-foot section at that event. Next slide. This is another map that James made. I put the bells and whistles to it, but this was our NODA Neighborhoods on the Air exercise in April. And for this event, we teamed up with Aries. We had 2 net control operating stations, and we actually had an airplane up in the air as well. Next slide. One thing I have not mentioned until now is the contribution of our blind hams in Salt Lake Crossroads events. We have Linda Reeder, N7 HVF, sitting over here right behind you. We have Missy Van Kampen, who's in the back, KC7 FMW. Missy, would you stand up? We also have 2 others. We have this lady here is Cindy Vega, KZ or K KJ. Yes, thank you. KJ7ZLJ. And another ham, Sylvia, KC7KQY. All of these hams are doing net control for Salt Lake Crossroads, but they're also coming and participating in our events. What we're showing is that ham radio can be inclusive. This is very important, that we let everybody know that anybody can get in to ham radio, regardless of what certain difficulties you may have. By the way, Cindy and Sylvia participated in the Days of 47 parade as part of the ham radio contingent this year. Up until this year, there's never been a blind ham that has been a part of the Days of 47 parade, and they were a little hesitant about allowing hams in the parade this year. But both of them showed that they were quite capable of doing their assigned positions, and they will be welcome back next year. Okay, next slide. One mistake we made was not being prepared to do classes immediately after the programs, the expos that we were doing. A lot of people signed up for our classes, but by the time we got around to holding one, starting in September, the interest either waned or people had gotten on to other things. In the future, we're going to do our best to hold classes immediately after one of these events. And we'll get people to, at the event, to sign up if they are interested in a class that'll start on a certain day. We'll have that all arranged when they come. And a separate sheet for people that want more information. James and I are now teaching our first class. We're making quite a few mistakes in doing so. It's, for one thing, it's taken a lot more work and a lot of work that was unnecessary, but we're learning. And the second class will be a lot better. So this is one of the things that we as a club can do to help promote ham radio. And afterwards, I'll get to your question right afterwards. And one other thing is that after the class is over with, we're not going to just leave people to their own devices, but we will get them involved, help them with antenna work, help them get their Baofangs programmed, get them on the social net, get them feeling comfortable being ham operators. And we also plan to take a page out of Noji KN0JI's book by sending everyone who gets their license, we'll send them a congratulatory letter with some information that they can use. And that is it. Last slide. And there's our Elmer. Oh, yes. Your question?
What was that frequency for the Crossroads net and the time, please? Repeat the
Yes.
question.
What was the frequency for the Crossroads net, he asked. Okay, it's 448.525 megahertz, a negative 5 megahertz offset, PL tone of 100. Any other questions? Yes, Pat.
Mike, I spent a weekend in September back in Connecticut, and our CEO, Dave Minster, this is the very discussion they're having back there. And I think the fact that efforts are being made to find out what works, what doesn't, and include new people in, and build up possibilities of filling the vacuum in leadership we have now, because we need to do something to build a base to fill that. And I think that it's commendable that these discussions are taking place, and these efforts to find out what works and what doesn't is very valuable.
Yes, that's true. And, hams feel frustrated. I could feel that frustration at the round table back on the 30th. And they were offering suggestions, different things that we can possibly do. One of the greatest suggestions is having an event for hams, trying to get the word out for hams that are new to the hobby or have been in the hobby but just cannot figure out how their equipment works, getting them to come to a breakfast, for instance, and help them program their radios, help them get some information on some of their local clubs, just an outreach program that makes them feel welcome, makes them feel, because as you and I both know from our first times with holding a mic in our hands, mic fright is a real thing, and you just don't know when to jump in. So I still remember, even though I had been a ham years before as a kid, when I got back into the hobby recently, mic fright was every bit as real as back when I was a kid. So, what we need to do is we need to get people to feel comfortable being hams. And so the conversation is, we're having it. And that's a good thing. Yes, Jerry.
So the Davis County Club holds an Elmer Day every year, and it's very well attended. And as I was attending it, one of the things I thought is our club is reeling from a little bit of loss of some brain trust, due to a silent keys, being discordant. But this club has traditionally had the vast majority of brain trust in amateur radio within our club membership. And folks may belong to other clubs and things, but there's a lot of brain trust. And Mike, what you're saying is what we need to do as a club, I think. Because we have a lot of knowledge. If we're not bringing some younger people along, we're going to continue to lose that brain trust. And so I'm hoping that we as a club will thank you for this presentation. Because I think it's something we really need to consider and sort of re-up our Elmer credentials from this club.
Yes, that would be good. And perhaps some of the folks here tonight would want to join us at future events. It's always, people are always welcome to come because sometimes we are a little short of volunteers, although we've done pretty good. But it's usually the same people showing up, so it's always we'll always be glad to have people show up. Yes, sir.
Do you have a calendar of events of these, or when do they come up?
Well, we pretty much know from doing it. Illuminate is this weekend, and we decided not to do it this year because it seemed like it was just very disorganized. Originally, we were going to do it, and then we found out that they're doing it at the Leonardo this year in Library Square. And for the STEAM lab, the load-in would have been 2 hours before the event started. And last year, I had the day before I was able to get in and set things up. And it takes a little while to get things set up, 2 hours, and especially everybody trying to get in at the same time in 2 hours. It just seemed a little chaotic to us, so we decided not to do it. But the Be Ready Utah Expo should be coming up in February. Get my nose here again. My nose is running. Yeah, Be Prepared will be in April then. The DIY Festival will be in August. And in September is the Avenue Street Fair. But there will be others as well. And as we learn about them, we'd like to explore getting involved with them as well. Okay, if no other questions, I will turn it back over to Bruce.
All right, way to go, Mike. And Mike's been helping us this last year with the program, and he's doing a really good job. And look forward to this next year to see even more wonderful things. All right.
So, are we ready to move on to Tim?
Yeah.
Tell him to wake up.
All right. Tim, are you there? There he is.
Here.
All right. You got the floor now to put on your presentation.
All right, you hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, you've got to turn on screen sharing.
We're working on that.
There you go.
Okay, we have screen share. Go ahead.
Okay. Let me get this in shape here. All right, good evening, everybody. I'm Tim Duffy, K3LR, and I'm going to talk about antennas and antenna building tonight. And an antenna is really a magical device. It's all physics, but it converts the RF power that comes out of our radios into electromagnetic radiation, and it also intercepts energy, and which then appears as RF voltage across the antenna's feed point, and that's how we receive things. And any conductor can be an antenna. Sometimes it's an unintended antenna. We also have some really important antenna parameters to keep in mind, and that is that we can have directivity and or gain with antennas, and that allows us to create effective radiated power, or ERP, and that is that's a really nice part about antennas, because you can put 100 watts in, and if you have 3 dB of gain, it's just like running 200 watts. Feed point impedance is also very important. Most of the time we want our antennas to be in the range of 50 ohms, and bandwidth is important. We want our antennas to work over a band of frequencies, not just on one frequency. Remember that an antenna that is a poor receiving antenna will be a poor transmitting antenna. So the reciprocity theorem exists. The near field is important because of absorption to humans. And the far field is important because that's how we measure the success or the efficiency of an antenna. As on HF, for instance, how well does it get into the ionosphere? So the dipole is a very simple antenna, but a very effective and efficient antenna. The length is about a half wavelength. So on 80 meters, that's about 130 feet. On 40 meters, about 66 feet. The self-impedance is very close to 50 ohms, which makes it an excellent match to coax. And it does have good bandwidth as well. If you want to get some more gain, you can extend the dipole to 1 wavelength. And however, the feed point impedance is complex and is nowhere near 50 ohms. So it is best to use 450 ohm or 300 ohm twin lead or open wire, because when the SWR is high on coax, the losses go way up. That's true for both receive and transmit. However, when the SWR is high on open wire or ladder line, the losses do not go sky high. They're still very small. So that's why you would want to use ladder line or open wire feeders with this antenna. But you do get almost 2 dB of gain by adding the wire. You get 2 dB of gain over the half wavelength dipole. You can even go further. The extended double ZEP, which is 1.28 wavelengths, it too has a complex feed point impedance. So best fed with open wire and a good open wire tuner. And you get 5 dBi of gain. That's 3 dB over a half wavelength dipole. You can use the dipole on several bands. The best way to do that, again, is by using open wire or ladder line and making sure that the antenna is at least a half wavelength on the lowest frequency that you can use. So in this case, let's say we want to be able to use the dipole on 80 meters through 10 meters. We would make it 130 feet long, feed it in the center with open wire, and then we can tune it on all the bands, 80, 60, 40, 30, 20, 17 meters without any problems with a good open wire tuner. You can have vertical dipoles, repeater antennas. The 4-pole antenna is a very popular antenna. That's vertical dipoles. Most of the dipoles that we see on the HF bands are horizontal dipoles. The vertical monopole is another popular antenna, quarter wavelength long. So for 40 meters would be about 33 feet high. And the success of a vertical depends upon the counterpoise or radial system that you have. And you feed these verticals right at the base. And the good thing about them is that their self-impedance is about 36 ohms when you have a good radial system. So it's very close to a 50 ohm coaxial match. Ground conductivity is important, and it can be improved by using a ground radial system. And those radials can be made of any kind of wire and typically just lay on the ground, and the ground will suck them in. And you can use elevated counterpoise wires, but they do have to be tuned. And so the radials are just like spokes and extend out. And you can use verticals that are shorter than a quarter wavelength, but what happens is the feed point impedance goes low, so you want to have a matching network, preferably right at the feed point of the vertical. Again, you want to match it to 50 ohms so that you can put your coax there and you won't have an SWR problem. The inverted L is a popular antenna, very inexpensive for 160 meters. Dimension A is as long as you can vertically, and then dimension B, you make up the rest of the length of the wire, which is about 0.3 wavelengths. That would be about 145 feet on 160 meters. And this is a very easy antenna to make work. It does require a radial system, but lots of guys have had success with the inverted L with as few as 4 radials just laid on the ground. You can use the vertical monopole on several bands. And again, you want to make sure that you have a good matching network right at the base of the vertical for best performance. And the ground system should be designed for the lowest frequency that you will use. So again, if it's the lowest frequency would be 40 meters, the radials should be about 33 feet long. And, 4 radials get you started, 12 is better, 32 is really good, and you stop at about 64. Delta loop, again, very inexpensive. 1 wavelength of wire. It's about 100 ohm feed point impedance, so it's easily matched with 75 ohm quarter wave matching section. And depending upon where you feed the loop antennas determines whether it's vertically polarized or horizontally polarized. And so you can change that depending upon what you want the loop antenna to do. And a lot of success is had by just modeling the loop antennas, or any antenna for that matter, before you install it. And EasyNet is now in the public domain, and it doesn't cost anything, and it's a very easy program to get used to for modeling antennas. Yagis, very popular antenna, has one driven element and then one or more parasitic elements. And the 2-element Yagi is about as simple as it gets, driven element. And then the parasitic can either be a reflector or a director. There are pros and cons to reflector or director 2-element Yagis, and it's not possible to maximize the performance of feed point impedance, gain, and front to back simultaneously with the 2-element Yagi. A derivative of the 2-element Yagi is the Moxon rectangle. You see these a lot on 6 meters and 2 meters. I actually have 2 of these on 40 meters. And the great thing about the Moxon is that the feed point impedance is 50 ohms right out of the box. So you don't need any matching network. It's got great gain, 6 dB, good front to back, 25 to 30 dB, and it's more compact than a Yagi or a quad. And so the Moxon rectangle is worth researching if you're looking for an antenna that you want to have very easy matching. There's no matching. You just hook it up. You do want to have a choke balun right at the feed point, but it's a straight 50 ohm feed. The 3-element Yagi has the driven element, 2 parasitics, a reflector and a director. And depending upon how you have the antenna modeling program set, it is possible to optimize any pair of the parameters of feed point impedance, known as ZN, gain, and front to back. So here's the 3-element Yagi. The reflector is slightly longer than the driven element. The director is slightly shorter. And then, the antenna optimization is varying the lengths of the reflector and director, and then also the spacings of the reflector to the driven element, and the driven element to the director. There are lots of ideas on building Yagi antennas in the ARRL antenna book, also in the ARRL handbook, and you can create your own Yagi antennas by using the antenna modeling software such as EasyNet. Here's a 4-element Yagi, so it's got a reflector, the driven element, and 2 directors. And if you want to get even more gain, you can stack antennas. So these are 2 5-element 2-meter beams that are vertically polarized, and they are both fed in such a way that the feed point impedance is matched to the coax that's going back to the transmitter and receiver. Each one of these 5-element Yagis has about 12 dB of gain. But if you put them together and you space them a half wavelength apart, or about 38 inches on 2 meters, you get an additional 3 dB of gain. So that's 15 dB just by stacking another similar Yagi. Here's some typical Yagis for 6 meters and 10 meters. The 3-element 10-meter beam is using a gamma match to match it to 50 ohms. And the 6-meter beam has got a folded dipole element that is 200 ohms. There's a 4-to-1 balun here that takes and matches it to the 50 ohm coax. Here's a very simple antenna. This is a ground plane, and it is using the SO239 socket as the mount for the ground plane wires. And here's the radiator wire going right into the center of the SO239. Notice that these ground plane wires are at an angle And that's done to raise the feed point impedance to about 50 ohms. If the wires go out at 90 degrees from the radiator wire, the feed point impedance is about 36 ohms. Here's one for 70 centimeters using a BNC connector. And so you can see it's very simple with copper wires and very effective. Here is our two ground planes. Figure A is the 90-degree one, and that's going to give you about a 36 ohm feed point impedance. Figure B is got the sloping radials, so you'll get a better match at about 50 ohms. Going back to Yagis, this is an M² Yagi antenna for 15 meters using a beta match off of the driven element to match it to 50 ohms. And then there is a balun here. This is made of 5 turns of coax. And this is an ugly balun. It's ugly for 2 reasons. It doesn't look very good. And most importantly, it doesn't work very good. It does not provide the proper amount of choking common mode impedance. It's much better to use ferrite cores to do your choking. Let's talk a little bit more about Yagis that have multiple elements. This is an 8-element 10-meter Yagi. It happens to be here at K3LR. This is the reflector back here. This is the driven element. And then the first director is very close to the driven element. This is known as an optimized wideband array. And what that does, having this director close to the driven element, that drives the feed point impedance to 50 ohms, and it stays there across 1 megahertz of 10 meters. So from 28.0 to 29.0, the SWR never gets above 1.2 to 1. Then there are additional directors here to develop more gain. This is on 15 meters. Again, the driven element here, the first director here, very close, the optimized wideband array to provide a 50 ohm match and to keep the SWR low across the entire band. This is using Garolite plates for insulators on elements, using the DX Engineering element clamps. And let's talk a little bit more about stacking gain. So here's one 8-element Yagi, and it's got 14 dB of gain. And you put a second one with it, you get 3 dB more, just like in the 2-meter slide that I showed. So now you're up to 17. To get 3 dB more than that, you have to double the size of the array. So you have to add 2 more. This gets you to 20 dB when feeding all 4 Yagis. You can get, there are several manufacturers of ring rotators that allow you to rotate antennas around the face of a tower, which you can make more use of your tower. And when you're putting together any antenna, you want to make sure your connections are clean. It doesn't matter if it's a wire antenna, aluminum tubing. And so you want to make sure that on aluminum tubing that you get all the aluminum oxide that is on the aluminum off before you put the aluminum elements together. And you want to use an antioxidant. For over 25 years, I've been using JetLube SS30. It is available at DX Engineering. This is an excellent antioxidant that will keep oxidation down and keep the elements clean when they're all put together. You simply put the antioxidant onto the aluminum elements, and then you put them together. And you can see a very small film is on the elements, and then they're put together. This is a homebrew antenna. So I've got cross pins in here. These are stainless steel cross pin screws with external tooth lock washers. And you can see the orange jet lube coming through. Another example of these are driven or directors for 15 meters. And this is the center of the element. And you can see that the smaller size tubing going in the larger tubing, again, using cross pins through driven elements for 10 meters here. So because of the optimized wideband array being 50 ohms, we just have our choke, and then we put the center conductor on the right side and the shield on the left side. It's fed just like a dipole, and it works extremely well. Here's 15-meter elements for driven elements with the studs. And then we talked about the Moxon. This is a 2-element 40-meter Moxon under construction. Here's the feed point, and then there are 40 number 31 beads on the RG213 coax, and the RG213 and the beads are spaced away from the boom. And what that does is that keeps the boom from detuning and compromising the common mode impedance of these beads. And so this is, you can see the overhead boom truss, and we're going to talk more about that in a minute. This is the feed point of the Moxon, and you can see here's the RG213 coax with a high quality PL259 connector. This is the DX Engineering feed point connector. So it's got a female SO239 connector here, UHF connector, that is mounted on the box. This is screwed in and weatherproofed using vapor wrap and Scotch 88 tape. And then out of the feed point connector comes the center conductor, which is the red, and it's on the right-hand side. And then the shield comes up here on the left-hand side. And all of the antennas here at K3LR are marked where that center conductor is, right on red. So if you're standing on the tower, you always know that the center conductor is on the right side. That's important from a stacking perspective, because you want to make sure that all your center conductors are on the same side. And back to antenna construction. This is a 3-inch boom with a 2-inch piece of aluminum tubing as the boom support riser. And you can see the Garolite plate here being prepared for one of the directors. And getting everything level, you want to get the plates level before you put the rest of the element on, using the DX Engineering saddle clamps, all stainless steel, and using nylock nuts. You can see the various director mounting is going on here, and a close-up, making sure that we've got clean aluminum with the antioxidant, getting everything level. And I do not use caps on the ends of elements. All that does is trap water, but I do use caps on the ends of booms because birds and other things can get into there. But you have to make sure you have a hole in that boom cap to let the water out. Very, very important. Water will get in, and you do not want to have your elements or boom accumulating any water. This is the overhead riser plate with the overhead riser, the 2-inch aluminum. And here you can see the Philly strand that is holding up the end of the boom. And here's the top of the riser showing the turnbuckles and the DX Engineering clamps and the plate that holds the turnbuckles and the top of the overhead boom riser. Here's the connection of the Philly strand boom support using a eye bolt to go through the boom. Here you can see the overhead boom support to keep the boom almost level. You want to let the boom sag a couple of inches just because you don't want this thing to be so tight like a banjo. And again, the hole in the end of the boom cap, all the elements are now level and ready to go. This is the bead choke that I talked about, 40 number 31 beads. We sell this as a kit at DX Engineering using high quality coax, the DX Engineering RG213, and then high quality PL259. It amazes me. Every day we have customers that call in with problems with antennas, and a lot of those problems are traced to bargain Hamfest PL259s. Do not buy them. A bargain, it might seem like a bargain, but you're spending thousands of dollars on your amateur radio station. Buy good connectors and you'll never have to worry. But boy, if you buy the cheap connectors, you're going to have to worry whether they solder correctly, whether they crimp correctly, whether they fit correctly, and the long-term problem that can be avoided by having good quality connectors. Driven element plate has more mounting to it because it's a split driven element here with the insulator in the middle. And again, we're going to attach the shield and the center conductor here. And here's the DX Engineering feed point connector with right on red. So the center conductor to this side, the shield to this side, and we're off and running. The 40 number 31 beads that go underneath the boom. And you can see the standoffs here to preserve the high common mode impedance of 40 number 31 beads. And you can see a lot of antenna photos and antenna ideas, and all my mocks and notes are on K3LR.com. And I also invite you to go to onallbands.com, which is the DX Engineering blog. Every day we're putting very interesting articles from blog writers that we have all over the world, and they are very educational on topics like emergency communications, go boxes, FT8, FT4, EME, D-expeditions, etc. onallbands.com. And that is my slide presentation. And if you have any questions, I'm available here.
All right, let's see here. I guess you can kind of say maybe we turn off the lights so we could see you. While we would all drool over the real estate you have, what are your recommendations for the best bang for the buck for two kinds of situations where you have to have an antenna that is not visible, or you have an antenna that's on a normal sized city lot that a lot of us have?
Well, we could spend hours talking about a question like that. I mean, you're going to have to figure out what bands you want to operate on, whether you have a tower or not. That all the rage these days is the end-fed wire antennas, which are, guys are finding that there's no free lunch when it comes to antennas. The end-fed really needs a counterpoise to work against. So vertical antennas are very popular. We sell a lot of vertical antennas that work on 80 through 10 meters. You put them in the backyard, and as long as you have a radial system, they're going to work very well. And as far as stealth antennas, we sell a stealth antenna wire that you can make wire antennas that it's almost invisible to have one of those antennas up.
Okay, let's see. Anyone else in here have questions? Let's see. I'll relay it. Come up here, and but you won't see this. Let's see. I guess I can put them on here. But right.
Tim, I noticed a lot of hardware dedicated to the mast to or the element to boom mountings. Have you found a meaningful difference in performance between an insulated element and one that's attached electrically to the boom?
Yes, and here's why I like insulated elements. I can model that better than I can attaching elements directly to the boom. The boom does affect the elements and their lengths, and I can better control that when they're insulated.
Following up on that, I've heard some people talk about the hazard of insulated elements can be rain static. What do you do to mitigate that?
The rain static is absolutely the same whether the element is connected to the boom or not. I have tried it both ways.
Okay, so there's no tendency, I guess, practically for like wind to accumulate static charge on an insulated element and occasionally arc over? Is that just been a non-issue, or is it that things get dirty enough that the charge bleeds off naturally?
Well, I'm not sure. I've not researched that totally, but I can tell you that there's no difference in what you hear as far as rain static or snow static on a grounded element versus an insulated one.
Okay. Let's see. Anyone else have a question here?
I had a question.
Okay. Go ahead, Boris.
Yeah, is it possible you can make your slides available to us?
This whole presentation has been given about 200 times. It's on YouTube, so it's very easy to find the slide deck. Just search for K3LR on YouTube, and you'll see probably 50 of these presentations.
Yeah, we will have this presentation on our website also. I just wondered if the slides themselves could be made available.
The slides are not available, but like I said, it's all over YouTube.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Let's see here. Let's see, did you have a question? Okay. Let's see. Give us your best recommendation for the type of balance, because the standard single core 4-to-1 balun, as you well know, is anything but balanced from a voltage standpoint. What is your recommendation for a truly balanced feed for a balanced feed line?
So my recommendation is to go to the DX Engineering website and search for 4-to-1 balun and purchase one of those. I can guarantee it's balanced. Okay, so they must be of the 2-core type rather than the single core type. And I'm guessing. Yeah, we can get into deep discussions about how many cores, but I can tell you that those baluns work perfect. Okay, excellent. All right. Let's see. I think that pretty much does it here. We appreciate your coming over virtually and giving this well-rehearsed and very thorough presentation, which kind of leaves us both a whirlwind of information and most of our questions have been answered. So we appreciate your coming over, coming here very much. Well, thank you so much for having me. And to those of you who are DX Engineering customers, thank you so much for your business and your trust. And if you have any problems, now you know the CEO, so you can always email me, and I will get back to you. And to those of you who have not tried DX Engineering, give us a shot. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised how well it goes. We ship from Sparks, Nevada to Utah. A lot of that is one-day ground. So if you're purchasing more than $100, it's going to be free shipping, and you're going to get it the next day as long as it's in stock. We also ship from Talmadge, Ohio, but we're very proud of our West Coast shipping out of Sparks, Nevada, which is very good for amateur radio operators in Utah. And again, thanks so much for having me this evening.
All right, we appreciate you, and we get a round of applause from everybody. All right, and is he off?
I'm gonna shut it down and go to bed. So
that works. Have a good evening. And
73, guys.
All right. Hanging lights only. All right. So, go ahead, Mike. Been reminded also of one other position that we might.
I was told by Chuck that Ricky Asper, AC7RA, will be the assistant microvolt editor. You had him down here. We need to have Jed as the microvolt editor, running as microvolt. Yeah. Kind of picky, but
It's two very different jobs.
yes, I've been told that what Ricky does is he does all the mailing duties of the microvolt, and there's a lot entailed in that, taking care of, yes, stamps, that's one of them, and labels, and getting them to the post office, and dealing with all of that stuff. So we appreciate Ricky doing that. You're not going to take my picture, are you? Holy cow. He's in trouble now. Yeah. You know, it's a good thing that they have electronic cameras now that burn up the film.
All right. All right. So, yeah, dealing with the post office is interesting at times. I used to do that in a previous job years ago. And there are sticklers, and there's things that regulations that have to be met for each mailing and for the volume that we're dealing with. And I think everybody's seen the once a year page that's in the microvolt that has the explanation of who we are, what we're doing, and why we should be given the nonprofit type status that we enjoy. So, all right, is there anybody else that would like to be involved in the leadership of this club? If you, right, you'll have another chance. Also, if you know of anybody that would like to be involved, have them get in contact with one of the officers of the club, and we'll include you in the elections next month. And with that, do we have a after meeting? All right. 660 East, 4th. Okay, 668 South, 4th East. Okay. All right, so that we can, do the eyeball QSO thing. Yeah, Mike?
Yeah, I do have a Elmer's Corner presentation if you'd like to do that.
All right, let's go ahead and put that together. Don't forget the meeting after the meeting, and we'll see you in second Thursday of December for our elections. Please come, bring your friends, family, we can stack the elections in your favor. Vote early, vote often. Come back again and again. Oh, and by the way, if you do have a Russian connection on the radio, that doesn't hold. We won't hold that against you. And so we'll see you next month.